Okay, students, we're going to review for your Mod 3 Topic 2 test. Number 1 should be basic. You're just matching up corresponding parts here, corresponding sides or angles. It's select the one that's true. Okay. Number 2, now we're getting into the trig. Okay, so let's say I tell you this is 40 degrees. I tell you this is 10 millimeters. Find x. Okay, and then round to nearest tenth. So obviously this is my reference angle. I should immediately identify my pieces, hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Okay, so I have opposite and hypotenuse, which is sine. So the sine of 40 degrees equals the opposite over the hypotenuse, which is x over 10. So when I cross multiply, I get x equals 10 sine 40. Now I go ahead and just put that in the calculator and round to the nearest tenth. Okay, now the key is your calculator must be in degrees, so you have to check your mode. Okay, so when you plug that in a calculator, you get approximately 6.4, and then of course the units are millimeters. Okay, that is A. I think, let's see, there's 2 more of these. So if I have another one, okay, so they say this is 65 degrees. Let's just say this is 10 and this is x. I want to solve for x. Well, obviously, again, I need to identify my pieces. Here is my reference angle. So there's the opposite, there's the hypotenuse, and there's the adjacent. So I'm using adjacent hypotenuse, which is cosine. So the cosine is 65 equals the adjacent 10 over the hypotenuse x. When I cross multiply, I get x cosine 65 equals 10. Now I need to divide by cosine 65 on both sides. And now I'll stick that in the calculator and round to the nearest tenth. Okay, and when you do that, $23.7. And then whatever the units are if they give you units. Okay. And so if you use sine, now you use cosine, and of course we would expect to use tangent next. Okay, so let's say they say 70 degrees. So that's x, and this is 15. Well, again, I recognize what is what. That's the opposite, that's the adjacent, and there's my hypotenuse. So again, I have opposite over adjacent, which is tangent. So tangent of 70 equals opposite x over 15. Cross multiply, I get x equals 15 tan 40. And at 40, putting in a calculator to the nearest tenth. That's why tan 40 is tan 70. And that's 41.2. Okay. And that should make sense. Remember, if that's 70 there, that makes this 20 because they're complementary. And the 20-degree side better be a lot shorter than the 70-degree side. And 15 is a lot shorter than 41.2. Okay, so you can always check those there. Okay. Next, number 3. You have that. And let's say they say 6, 15, and they say find measure of angle, let's just go B. They can say A or B. Okay, so that makes B my reference angle, and then I say what those are related, how they're related. That's the opposite side, and that's the adjacent side. Opposite over adjacent is tangent, so I'd have the tangent of B equals the opposite, 15, over the adjacent, 6. And then to solve for B, I take the inverse tangent of both sides. So on the left side, it cancels out. I have that. And we're going to round to the nearest degree. So now I type in the calculator. You gotta make sure you use inverse tangent, not tangent. You're gonna get a wrong answer. And the nearest degree would be 68 degrees. Okay, remember nearest degree means the one spot. Okay, next. Let's just go ahead and move this down. 4. Change to green. D, E, F, say. And the question is which ratio has the same value as sine of E. Okay, and it's multiple choice. You gotta pick them here. Okay, so if this E is my reference angle, okay, there's the hypotenuse, adjacent, opposite. We know sine is opposite, so let's just put a little E there. You know, this is a little d. Oops, that's a capital D. Change it to a lowercase d. And that's a little f, opposite angle f. So the sine of E would be little e, opposite over hypotenuse d. So we need another one that will also give me E over D. But I can't use, obviously, angle E again because the only one that's going to give me that is sine E. That'd be the exact same answer. You never use the right angle. So now you're talking about F. What one of F? So if F now is my reference angle, okay, then this one becomes the opposite. This one becomes the adjacent, and this is still a hypotenuse because that never changes. In terms of F, angle F here, what answer will give me E over D? The what of F equals E over D. E is the adjacent. Adjacent over hypotenuse is cosine. So the cosine of F equals E over D, and the sine of E equals E over D. So this is my answer, cosine of F. Okay, they will give me the same ratio, E over D in this case. All right, next, I got a couple triangles, just some bigger numbers now. Let's say this is 300. This is 40 degrees. Find X. And then you got another one. Let's say you have 500 Y and 35 degrees. Okay, so they want you to solve for X and Y. You're just figuring out X and Y. Well, if I notice, I put in my values here, there's the opposite and there's a hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse for both of these reference angles. So both of them are O over H, which is sine. So the sine of 40 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. Sine of 35 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, just cross multiply, I get X equals 300 sine 40. Y equals 500 sine 35. Okay, and I didn't write down what they wanted you to round it to. So let's go to the nearest tenth. I'm just playing the calculator now. 300 sine 40. 192.8. And 500 sine 35. 206.8. Okay, whatever the units are, if they give you units. Okay. Next, 6. Okay. Your altitude, or another word for altitude is height. You should know that already. Altitude is, say, 4,000 feet. Okay, with an angle of depression of 36 degrees. I'll say 45. Make it, okay, no, that's 45. 45. We don't want to make it nice and easy. 44 degrees. Okay. How far is the skydiver from the landing zone? Okay. So you're at 4,000 feet. Landing zone, LZ right there. Angle of depression, 44 degrees. I drew this out here because that's a parallel to this right here. We know alternate interior angles are equal. So that makes the alternate interior angle right there 44 degrees. And we have 4,000, and we want to find out how far you are right there from the landing zone right there. So that's the hypotenuse in this case. Okay. So the angle of depression, which is right there, is congruent to the angle of elevation if you're looking from the ground. They're the same. So now I go ahead and figure out which trig function I'm looking for this one. So identify it. Well, obviously that's my hypotenuse, and there's my opposite. So I have sine. Sine of 44 equals the opposite, 4,000, over the hypotenuse, x. Cross multiply, I get x sine 44 equals 4,000 divided by sine 44 on both sides. And now you just put in a calculator. 4,000 divided by sine of 44. 570, we'll go to the nearest foot, so 576. Okay, that's the nearest foot. All right, and last one, number 7. Okay. So I have a triangle. Let's say they tell me this is 70 degrees. This is 12 inches. This is 9 inches. Okay. A says find the area. And B says determine the length of the longest side. Okay. So area of a triangle when it's in SAS format as this is. Remember, you're at 1/2 AB sine of C, where this is A, this is B. It's angle C, so we put a B there and an A there. Okay, so 1/2 A times B, doesn't matter the order, so let's put it 12 because I can take half of 12 easily. 9, and then sine of 70. So half of 9, half of 12 is 6 times 9 is 54 sine 70, and now I'm just putting that in a calculator. And then since it's area, I know it's going to be square units at the end. So I have 54 sine 70, and that is 50.7. We'll round to the nearest tenth. 50.7 square inches. Okay, you got to put square inches on it because area. Okay, now the longest side, we do not have law of sines to use because remember, law of sines, you'd have to have, if I have this angle, I need to either have this opposite side or else I'm going to need one of these two angles, A or B, which I don't have at all. So law of sines doesn't work. So it's going to be law of cosines. Okay. So I'm trying to find C. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C. So C squared equals A squared, so it's 81 plus B squared, 144, minus 2 times 9 times 12 times cosine of 70. So now you're putting that in your calculator. 81 plus 144 minus 2 times 9 times 12 times cosine 70. And that is 151.124 approximately. Okay, now you're going to leave that answer in there. So that's C squared, right? So now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So to do that, I can just hit square root button and then hit second, the negative sign for answer. And I'll put that answer in there, so I'm not doing any rounding at all. And then hit enter, and that comes out to be 12.29. So 12.29 inches. Round to the nearest hundredth. It'll tell you what to round to. So 12.29 inches. Okay. So remember, it's not squared because it's not area, it's just one length. That's a single. Okay. So there is the review for your test. You know, similar to that, except for different numbers. Okay, and that will do it. 18.5 minutes.